How do you build a website that gets better interaction, better engagement, better customers, more buyers? Well, ZURB's worked with hundreds of startups and some really big customers, including like eBay and Britney Spears. And today we're going to find out more about their tools that they're coming out with and more about how they help companies build better websites. Who are you?
I'm Brian Zmijewski. I'm the founder of ZURB, and I've been leading the charge for the last 13 years.
And who are you?
Jonathan Smiley. I'm a design lead here at ZURB. I've been here for a couple of years working on all kinds of client projects, all kinds of internal projects, a lot of fun stuff.
And what is ZURB? Because I've heard your name for years. I've seen TechCrunch articles about you guys.
We've worked with a range of companies, but our focus is on interaction design. So we help companies figure out tough interactions in their website, whether it be an application or a standalone website. So an example being a startup that comes to us and says, hey, we need to get our product launched. We have 4 slides. We have an idea of the market we want to get. How do you help us get there? Or a larger business that says, hey, we've been in business for 2 years, we have a revenue stream, and we're trying to figure out how do we grow that revenue stream, or what do we need to be doing differently with our product so that customers either want to buy more from us or want to buy a different product from us.
What are you noticing with your clients? What kinds of challenges are they having?
Web 1.0 was all about getting your website online, understanding what web business was all about, and then you started seeing a lot more Web 2.0 stuff. Whatever that meant was engaging with customers in ways that maybe they weren't before. Social media has kind of made that on the top of everyone's mind, is how do I get my customers to my website using social media tools. What we've seen recently is that people now have lots of followers, they have lots of people that are potentially interested in their services, but they haven't been able to capitalize on it. They don't know what to do with those customers. So they're having to rethink their products, their websites, to gear the services they offer around their customers, to engage them, to pull them into their services. And a good phase of growth, because there's just people are coming online and want to try things. Now it's about engaging and continuing those relationships, and that's a lot harder to do. So their approach to products and their websites has to be drastically different than it's been in the previous 10 years.
When you sit down with Starbucks or a company like that and they need help, you're building tools for them, and you're also you're helping them with consulting and
right.
using your expertise. Right.
So there's 3 areas that we're focusing on. Our focus is interaction design, but the way we actually help people is through our services, which in consulting, the more we learn about what we're doing with other clients, we can apply our lessons learned to new projects. The second is tools and apps that help people do that on their own. So a lot of the things we're working on are so new or don't have enough tools to support it that we've just started designing our own. And the third is through education. So we put a lot of information on our blog, we host a lot of speakers, we try and write articles that help explain some of the things we're learning along the way. So as part of all 3 of those things, our goal is to be the world's best at this, is to understand how do you actually engage your customers on your website.
Correct me if I'm wrong. My thesis is a lot of your customers come to you to help with conversion. Help me get somebody onto my website first, and then help them get to the buy button right. as fast as possible, and make sure that there's nobody who leaves
right.
in that process.
Right. Our mantra at ZURB is designed for people, yeah. and we put people first because when you start looking at how do you convert, it's about your customers, and they have to feel comfortable and confident about having some type of relationship with the business that they're buying from. And so we find that when you build that long-term engagement up, that's when you get return customers coming back to you. So we try to balance the necessity of getting those conversions with the long-term growth of their customer base, and trying to figure out what keeps people coming back. Yeah. It's a lot easier to get one conversion. It's a heck of a lot harder to keep getting money from someone if they're not happy or satisfied with the service. And you see that a lot online. Is a lot of people will express their frustrations about a service that doesn't deliver all the way through, and then what happens is that growth curve that companies are looking for isn't going to happen because there's just not enough positive momentum. There may not be a ton of people having negative stuff, but there isn't enough positive momentum to carry them into that, stratosphere hockey curve, place. I like to give all the companies we work with hope. So one of the stories that makes I think a lot of people excited is the PhotoBucket story. So we worked with PhotoBucket before their acquisition, and you could look at PhotoBucket and say, wow, that's just not necessarily the prettiest looking website around, right? They don't even maybe have a cohesive story that comes across in what they do, but what they really got right was links, linking your photos online. And that was the story, and the story happened through an interaction. I put something up, I was given an option to put it somewhere else, and they made that extremely easy. The complexity of that story was probably done overnight. Someone thinking about it, Alex, trying to figure out how to do that right. So when we think about brand marketers and marketers thinking about a story, online it doesn't always have to be complicated. It doesn't even have to be pretty. It has to solve unique problems that no one else does online and do it really well. And that's where you start getting that viral growth, that growth where it happens of solving someone's problem, people getting extremely excited about it, and then you get this tumble effect of people flocking to a service. So when people ask for that story, what we like to say is it really happens in a few interactions, and if you can nail that, then the story starts evolving and the words start forming around those interactions. So that, that to anyone that's, two people in a shop just trying to figure out how to create a great story, that story happens with the things you're building and tinkering and figuring out what are those unique elements in those interfaces.
So what tools do you give your clients or give the world to help us figure out, are we on message with story or conversion or both?
Right. So there's a lot of great analytics tools out there. Free Google Analytics, has a wealth of information. Everyone probably has the opportunity to try and pull some in. But what we found in those types of tools is those are helpful once you actually have a product launched. Still very difficult to pull information from. There's a whole component of building things that happens before you can even collect web analytics. You have to understand something about the market you're serving. You have to understand something about the intent of the users trying to get some piece of knowledge or take some kind of action or require some kind of service. So our tool sets are really about trying to help understand how do you get to that information, how do you get to what the customer's trying to do. It's a kind of a balance between analytics and that fuzzy survey type marketing type thing. So our tools uniquely fit into that category of how do you get that feedback to make better decisions. And that's typically in taking qualitative information that is somewhat fuzzy and turning it into more quantitative to help you make distinct decisions.
So tell me about what you're announcing or what you just announced.
We've been releasing Verify, which is now our second application after Notable. Verify is a screen testing tool which helps you essentially get feedback, really specific directed feedback around particular types of tests, which we can show as well, so that you actually have some information to work with while you're still making decisions, either in the run-up to launch a product or a service or a website. To get you some feedback initially, you can use it with wireframes, you can use it with comps or mock-ups, you could use it with a prototype potentially, as well as to iterate after you've already released things. So if you already have a website running and you're just not getting that conversion, you don't feel like you're telling the story, you don't think you're making an impression, you can very, very quickly, in most cases less than about 3 minutes, set up one of these screen tests and distribute that to your Twitter followers, to Facebook, to whatever sort of audiences are available to you, as well as sort of almost a viral audience that the tool creates, to get some immediate feedback, to get some stuff that you can view in sort of a qualitative way, so you can look at their individual responses and make some calls based on what they're saying. But you can also view quantitatively. So we're going to aggregate as much of that as we possibly can and present it to you in as simple a way as possible so that you know what's going on and you can make some intelligent decisions.
So we just did one for Rackspace, and you just put a screenshot of our homepage and then asked some specific questions, like where would you go for help? What does that help you learn about your design and where you need to refactor or rethink it or even approve it and say, this is working, let's go, let's ship it, let's do it?
Right. So in a lot of cases, if we're talking about specific example of, where do you go to learn more about Rackspace? Let's say we asked that, for example. You may find that something that's really clear to you is not clear to your users. Like we've run into a number of situations where we use verify we use it to verify what we actually think is the case, and sometimes we're right and sometimes we're wrong. In many cases, there's conventions on the web for, if you want somebody to click on something, make it a different color, make it look like a button, put it in this particular place or in that particular place. And typically that stuff holds up. It's when you get into more specific things like, if you wanted to sign up for this service, where do you go? You may find that the story that you're telling leads people to think, oh, if I want to sign up for this, maybe I want to learn more about it first. So they're going to go to something called Learn More. They're going to go to something called Take a Tour or something like that. Or maybe they're just going to go straight sign up. And you can actually get a sense of how many people do one thing, how many people do another.
And the result set was quite interesting because it looks like a heat map, right?
Right. So in many cases, we have a number of different test types that we've already put into Verify, and actually we're going to be adding more over time. But some of the ones that we've started with are things like a click test, where you give people a question, and that question is actually critical because what you ask informs what people are going to respond to. If you just say, click somewhere, you're not going to get anything valuable out of that. But if you say, click on where you'd go to sign up, click on where you'd go to learn more, potentially even click on the first thing that catches your eye.
Or if you're Starbucks, click on where you buy coffee.
Exactly. Click on where you go to buy coffee.
You want to know that people can find that conversion place.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
And if they can't find where to buy coffee, that's a real important thing to know.
Or in your case with Rackspace, Fanatical support. So to take a scenario of this is that, if you're coming to your website, you really want to convey that. So, in the first click, how do you get that conveyed? Where is it? Now, if I'm looking for product or services and I go to a product page, how do I now get to that Fanatical service? Well, how do I see that? What are the elements on that page that are going to encourage me to learn more about that? Because that's the essence of your brand, is that support.
Now, you can see also demographic detail, right? So you can see where the 18-year-olds would click and where the 60-year-olds would click.
Right.
Can you tell anything else about that audience? Can you tell like how mobile centric they are, for instance? Do they have an iPhone or? I'm not sure if you report that.
In some cases, right now, you can essentially elect to collect various demographics from the people who take your tests. And right now, there's essentially a set of what you can ask for, which includes things like age, sex. We actually collect location for you, so you can actually filter by location as well. You can also ask for things like, what's your Twitter handle, what's your email address. So in cases where you want to distribute a test to a very specific audience, you want to, give it to. You tweet it out to specifically people who follow your company and are interested in your company. It's also potentially another tool to connect with those customers. Right. So you can say, here's the people who are willing to give us their email addresses. Here's the people who are willing to give us their Twitter handles. We can actually communicate with those people. Right. We can actually.
Right. So
it'd be interesting if you could see who has a clout score of more than 25, because then you would know who are influencers, right?
Right.
Potentially.
So here's an example. We used it with a client just recently. And they have, they're selling inventory across the U.S., and they had a group of, let's say, 100 people from Atlanta. And so we pushed questions to that group in Atlanta so they can target specific groups and learn certain things about that group. And we're also picking a different market to send the same exact test to figure out what's the difference between these two groups. So if you're selling regionally, people are going to have different needs. In this case, it's golf courses. So there's going to be a wide variance in what people are looking for based on, what kind of weather they have in year-round playing versus like 6 months playing.
This goes way beyond A and B testing, A/B testing, right? A/B testing is where a website can put up one version of the website to one group and then another version of the website to another group and see if there's any difference in conversions or whatnot.
So that's a lot of time and effort to set that up and to actually start reporting and collecting that data. This tool speeds that up quickly by putting things in front of people very, let's just say not necessarily completely scientifically, because we're taking qualitative information, but you get answers really fast.
Yeah, if you have 1,000 followers on Twitter, you probably are going to get 20 answers like within a minute.
Right, and that's enough for a lot of businesses to make gut decisions on things, and we'll show you specifically what we're talking about so you can see how that's influenced our own decisions on certain products.
Right.
How do you make sure you add, first of all, that you show a good screenshot or a good comp that would get you to a good question, and then how do you make sure you ask a really good question that's going to get you good information here?
So in terms of what you actually test, I mean, some of that comes down to internal process. Some of that comes down to who it actually is within the company that's going to be asking these questions. I mean, for us, it's relatively easy because we have a lot of designers, so we know when we're testing wireframes and when we're testing visual comps, and we have a sense of what we're looking for. I mean, in larger companies, what we're actually doing with Verify is making it so that not only can you test screenshots, so if you have screenshots available, if there's things specifically you want to check, we're also making it so that you can capture directly from a URL. So if you want to just grab a screenshot of a page that you know exists, this is actually something that we found is really helpful for marketers, for executive types who don't have the capability to generate a screenshot, don't do the mock-ups themselves, don't do anything like that. They can just say, I want to test our homepage, drop in the URL for the homepage, and you get back a screen automatically that you can start testing.
Right. Okay.
So that's one way they help with that. The other way is actually for any given test type, we actually supply several different questions that we think are generally good questions to ask. So just ways of sort of framing the discussion. So for a click test, the default might be, hey, click on where you'd expect the next step to be or what you think the next step is. We might also ask, click on the first element that catches your eye. Click on the element where you would go to buy our products, something like that. For different test types, the question differs. Yeah. What you're asking for is going to dictate what you actually get back in return. Some of them are simpler than others, something like a memory test. You almost don't need to ask anything. You almost don't want to ask anything. You just kind of want to say, hey, look at the screenshot for a few seconds, and then when it's done, we say, what are 5 things that you remember? And based on what they remember, you can decide, am I showing the right things? Am I giving things the right prominence? If somebody only looks at my screen as they're walking by somebody else's computer, are they going to take away from it what we are, or are they just going to get a picture of a guy with an iPhone?
So that's how you test whether you're telling a good story and a cohesive story, and if that story is getting through, right?
Right. That's one way. Yeah, that's one way you can test that, and it's almost like the putting your best foot forward thing. It's just if you want to make a good first impression, you need to make that first impression in the first 3, 4, 5 seconds.
Right.
And how much is it to use this tool? Is this a free tool?
$9 for the simple plan, and then $29 to be able to include demographics and linking your test. So being able to create a test that has 10 tests in it.
$9 per test, or $9 a month?
Per month. So we're looking at it as a service because the way we use the tool and we anticipate people using the tool is not really having to think about per test. It's just being able to use it as a service whenever they need it, and the costs are low enough that it's insignificant to the product development or website. So
and this works on iPad as well, so you can see if people get the point of interaction on the iPad as well.
Yep.
Are you seeing any difference between some of the tests on iPad versus a desktop computer?
We had limited testing in some ways, only because the tool hasn't been released to a larger group. So aggregating that and seeing what's happening, too early to tell.
Yeah,
interesting.
But it'll be interesting to see, just because even independent of Verify, some of the work we've done on the desktop and on the iPad is that our suspicion is going to be that the results are going to differ quite a bit because people expect to use those devices in such different ways.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a huge gap between how you interact with a mouse and how you interact with your whole hands.
And also you have horizontal and vertical.
Right, there's orientation factors, there's a number of different pieces that
so you probably should test out your website when you do it for vertical, or like Flipboard actually changes everything when you switch it vertical, horizontal.
Right.
And so you should test out everything again.
Yeah. One of the other things I think is important here is that the tool also supports creating something in a PowerPoint, trying mocking something up as fast as you can, or Balsamic, or some of these tools that help you quickly visualize something, and testing that. Because ultimately you don't need to tell the whole story, you need to get bits of that story right, and however you can quickly get that out is going to help you inform your decisions when you actually are investing in visual design, or you're spending money with a design team or a designer or a freelancer to help you build something. So I think it's important to know that you don't have to be a designer or know how to create sophisticated images to get something that's going to be valuable.
We've even done Verify tests on Sharpie sketches. You just scan the sketch and post it in here.
Or take a picture.
And you can actually get pretty valuable results even from that. So.
Interesting. Right. Where do I learn more about it?
You can learn more about Verify at verifyapp.com.
Okay.
You can take a tour, you can run through it, you can actually sign up. Any of the accounts the first 30 days are free. You can sign up in about 60 seconds. You can actually be running your first test within about 5 minutes, probably less. It's very, very fast.
And where do I find more information about ZURB?
ZURB is ZURB.com.
And where do I find you guys on Twitter?
Wow, now you're asking. Now you're asking. So if you go to ZURB.com under Brian, you'll find my Twitter handle there.
Okay.
Right. You can actually find mine as well under ZURB.com, under my page on ZURB.com. I'm also SmileyJ68 on Twitter.
Very cool. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks.